Today I want to talk about web performance, and to narrow it down, because it's such a broad field, specifically page load speed. So how fast is your website till it first opens? Roughly why, how, and what to consider. The first one is why. Why do we need that? It's cool. That's actually enough for most developers, like yeah. If you need some reasons to tell your boss or some marketing people, there are loads of very clear statistics, both from Google, Amazon, and others, which show that a lot of people disappear if you have a bad page speed. So if your site, especially on mobile, takes a long time to load, they just go away. Yes, also 1 second delay can mean up to 20% less conversions. So lots of money for big sites. And yeah, there are many more statistics like that. You'll find lots of reasons how to convince your boss. How to test. So there are many different tools. One of the more famous ones is Google PageSpeed. And you can use it online, or you can also use it as a Chrome extension. So in the Chrome developer tools, there's an audit tab, and it leverages the page speed to give you feedback on your current site. It ideally looks like this. It gives you some statistics of what to optimize and how to optimize. So if you have a page like this, it gives you a score here. It gives you a score for mobile and for desktop. And it tells you here what you should improve, and it tells you here what you already have improved. There's one very important thing here. Consider all these things as recommendations. They are not necessarily true. I'll go into details more. They are things you should check if it's good or not. They might be fine. Then there's page speed test. It gives you, so you enter a URL, you get a result, it runs a few times. The ones at the top give you a rough idea if everything is good or not so good. There are flaws to this one, which is especially if you have a video. If you have a video on the site at the top, the whole statistics about load time and interactive are fucked up. Because it considers, so the video is always moving, so it doesn't know when it's finished. And also it waits till the whole video is loaded, till it's considered loaded, even if you stream the video. So that's a small caveat. Yes, this is a very general, easy look to check. The load time means basically how long does it take till your website is fully loaded. The first byte means how long did your server application need to actually figure out what it wants to send you. Start rendering. So the difference between first byte and start rendering is your CSS and JavaScript mainly. And first interactive is also very strongly connected to JavaScript. We'll go into details later. So yeah, mentioned it doesn't work if you have videos. Also, one very good resource is if you use Google Analytics or Pivik or one of these tools. I use Google Analytics as an example. It tracks real user data. So you can actually see how it behaved on real users, and yeah, which is also interesting because it doesn't give you only your use case, but it runs on real users. Also, there's a new tool from Google called Winning on Mobile, which gives you test data from Google Chrome. So in Chrome, if you say share my data, it will use this data to tell you how fast some websites are.
What's the name of the tool, sorry?
It's called Winning on Mobile. I don't have it in the slides. Talking about page speed. but I think it's my notebook. The battery is quite almost empty. Yeah, it's called no, you don't see it here.
Winning on mobile.
Just winning on mobile. I think it doesn't do anything here. Yeah, and it gives you real user data. This is also already integrated into the page speed. So if you use page speed on a domain where it has data, it will show it to you in the top. So this part here, where it says how long your site takes compared to others, and this one here, where it says unavailable in my case, this is the data from Google Chrome reports, both on mobile and on desktop. Yes, so how to optimize? I'm mentioning a few things on the server, but we're not server guys, so we'll not talk about that too much. The first thing is you need to send out static HTML. So if you have a React app, if you have an Angular app, something like that, you somehow need, and there are many tools out, that you render a first version on the server and send out some HTML, and then the JavaScript should kick in and makes it interactive. The second, of course, you need SSL. Everybody who, you need SSL, and you should consider how often you redirect someone before they actually see the first page. So many times you enter, I don't know, example.org, then you get redirected to www.example.org, then you get redirected to www.org/default.html. So you have 2 redirects, and that's valuable time. Actually, most pages are redirected, so this is very bad. Try to avoid it as much as possible. And also try, if it really is necessary, try to do it on a server level, like Nginx or Apache, and not on the application layer. Damn it, my battery. Yes, and the next thing is you should leverage browser caching. So you can configure how long resources are cached, and that usually should be above 1 day. So if you deliver CSS or JavaScript or images, they normally don't change, so put in long headers. It's even good for images or things like that, to make like a week or a year or whatever you can do. And if you have your code, if you have your images on something like Amazon AWS or Google Cloud, every time you change the image, it creates a new URL anyway, so you can cache it for as long as you want. And if you use something like Typekit, was an example here, many times there's an optimization to say use long caching times. And here's the great example of why Google PageSpeed only gives you suggestions, because it actually triggers often on their own code. So here it tells me that the Google iframe API should be modified. It's not. You'll also get a warning that Google Analytics should be cached for longer than 2 hours, and it's only cached for 2 hours. So you can't really do things about that. That's why you normally will not achieve 100% score in Google PageSpeed, because there are other dependencies. Same with Vimeo and many others. You can change their servers, right? And use a CDN. It's quite cheap already. You can pay $10-20 per month and get a good CDN, and it improves your page speed as well. So front end, the first obvious one, because it's so much data size, optimize your images. Earlier it was easy, you just compress the image and you're done. But we have these small fuckers, and so you need to use responsive images. There are 2 ways of using responsive images. The first one is with sizes and source sets, where you actually define many different sizes of the same image, and the browser just figures out which one it needs. So here, if I'm defining that the the size of the image is always 50% of the browser width. And the browser itself knows how big it is, so it can divide that by 2. It also knows if it uses a retina display or something like that, and it automatically chooses the right size of the image. And then you just give it many different options of image sizes, and your browser uses the right image. That's easy to optimize. If you want to show different images on mobile and on desktop, you can also use the picture element, which allows you to do art direction. I'm not going into that too much because I actually gave a lightning talk about that already. If you have an image with its full width on the browser, you should have at least 6 different sizes for that image. I typically use the biggest size around 2000 pixel. It depends a bit on how much you care about quality versus speed. But you need a lot of different image variations, and each of those images also need to be compressed. So this is normally either your workflow, like grunt, gulp, or whatever, or your server. And also, you should use WebP. WebP is a kind of new image format. It's pushed by Google, and if you use, for example, Google Chrome, you should detect that. Your server should detect that and deliver WebP images. They are way, way smaller. And yeah, many services give you that out of the box. If you use something like Cloudflare, you just make one checkbox, use WebP, and you're done. And coming back to Google PageSpeed, Google PageSpeed expects you to do very, very aggressive image compression. And if you have some design-focused websites, you might not want to do it that aggressive. So really find your own balance here. If you do it like Google, it'll be very, very aggressive. Which comes to, oops, where is it? No, I don't have it on this page. On some pages it triggers because it expects the image to be really, really strongly compressed. For videos, to compress the video, just use a tool called Handbrake. It's very easy. Just use the default settings, and you will be surprised how much space you can save. And normally deliver them as MP4. That covers almost every browser. If you have really big sites, you might need fallbacks, but the optimal solution is MP4. Always provide a poster image. So the browser, if you use the video tag and you define a poster image, what the browser does, it first loads that picture and shows it till the video is ready, which is really helpful. And to optimize videos which are actually running automatically, if you set muted to true and autoplay to true, it can run on your mobile phone. So you can have videos running on your mobile, basically every modern mobile, so no need anymore to use these compressed GIF formats which are 3 times, 4 times bigger than video. Next one, pretty obvious for you developers, reduce the amount of resources you use and minify JavaScript and CSS. This is a trend of how big websites go, and you'll see right now the typical size of a website is around 4 megabytes, and it should be between 1 and 2 typically. So there's lots of possibility for yourself to position yourself as a fast website. Yes, here it gets a bit more difficult. Google heavily focuses on limiting render blocking code. Render blocking means if your HTML is fully loaded, is it able to show you something, or is there some JavaScript in between, some JavaScript in the head, or some CSS in the head, which blocks the rendering till it's loaded? for CSS, you normally need it because you need to have your CSS before it renders the page. For JavaScript, the first rendering should be able without JavaScript, and you should put your JavaScript in the footer or define it as async, which is common best practice. Yeah, you should prioritize visible content. That means if you have a list of, I don't know, 100 entries, only the first ones should load the real images, and then use lazy loading or use some just 100 kilobyte images and blur them so your page loads faster. And inline CSS is something which is very, very effective, and it means extra effort for you. The basic idea of inlining is that instead of having a separate CSS file which you link to, you inline that CSS, and if your page is bigger, you should only inline critical CSS. Inlining critical CSS can be very complicated. There's a page speed module for both Apache and Nginx, which will do it for you out of the box. Just make sure it really works for you. There are some edge cases which are not covered, but that's an optimal solution. Another good solution is to totally inline all your CSS, which works if your CSS is in a reasonable size. But try it out in your browser yourself and see if it gets actually faster or slower. Yes, so that was a very high-level talk. I would like to have your feedback if I should go in one of these topics in detail. I could talk about each of these topics probably for 20 minutes. As a more high-level consideration, you always have to find a weight between features you want to support, the development time to make that fast, and the page speed. So it would be great if your website loads in 1 second and has a huge amount of features, and it doesn't make sense in most of your projects because you're not Google, right? So just try to find a balance, but make sure your website loads below 3 seconds. If it gets above 3 seconds, you should really consider taking more time on the speed and less time on the features. And also figure out some metrics in your company. They might be different from company to company. If you have news websites, you need it faster. If you have a website where people load it once and then spend half an hour on it, it might be possible that it's slower. But find a metric and then really stick to it. So have an automatic test. When you break it, it doesn't deploy. Because that's the only option that you really take the time to optimize for speed. All right, thank you.